My name is Neoma Thompson. I'm 29 years old. I never thought I'd be writing something like this. Not because my life has been peaceful, far from it, but because I spent most of my adult years pretending I didn't have a family at all. It was easier that way, cleaner, less disappointing. But then I bought a house, and suddenly everyone remembered I existed. I was sent away to boarding school when I was 8. Not because my father couldn't afford to raise me, he always had money, but because his new wife didn't want a child that wasn't hers. My mother tried to soften it, tried to make it sound temporary. She always did that. She shielded me from the truth even when it hurt her to do so. She died when I was 5. A drunk driver ran a red light on an intersection she crossed every day. He lived, she didn't. I remember waiting for her after school, watching the clock. She was 10 minutes late, 10 minutes that stretched into 2 hours. When my father finally arrived, he wasn't frantic, he wasn't crying, he was annoyed. "What do we do with her?" he asked the woman standing beside him. Marissa, his wife, looked at me like I was an inconvenience someone had left on the sidewalk. "Your kid, your problem." That sentence followed me into adulthood. After that, I learned fast. I learned that survival meant independence. I started working at 15. I learned to keep my emotions locked away. I went to college and only came home for holidays, if you could call it home. Most of the time, I felt like a guest who overstayed her welcome. Ashlin was born when I was 5, my stepsister. She was everything I wasn't allowed to be: loud, demanding, protected. My father adored her. She could do no wrong, and when she did, someone else cleaned it up. I didn't hate her, not then. I just didn't exist to her. By the time I graduated, I'd already been living on my own for years. I worked my way up, took risks, managed side projects, saved every dollar. I didn't rely on anyone because I learned early that reliance came with a price. Last month, I finally reached a goal I never thought I'd touch. I bought my own house. It wasn't flashy, just a small, warm place with a backyard and walls that belonged to me. The first night I slept there, I cried, not because I was lonely, but because for the first time in my life, I felt safe. Against my better judgment, I invited my father, Marissa, and Ashlin to the housewarming. Basic decency, I told myself. A moment this big deserved acknowledgement. My father walked through the house like an inspector, asking about the furniture, the architect, how much everything cost. He didn't say he was proud. He didn't say congratulations. "You never told me you were earning this much," he said, loud enough for my coworkers to hear. "I didn't know you cared," I replied. He laughed, but his eyes didn't. A week later, he called me at work. "It's urgent," he said. When I arrived at their house, the atmosphere felt wrong. Ashlin was sitting on the couch with red, swollen eyes. Marissa stood beside her, arms crossed like she was guarding a prize. My father was in the kitchen pulling beers from the fridge. He asked me if I was blind. Then he asked me if I'd finally started caring about my family. Then he told me Ashlin was pregnant. I opened my mouth to congratulate her, but she burst into tears before I could finish the sentence. Marissa wrapped her arms around her like a saint on display. That's when my father turned to me and said, "You're giving your house to your sister." I laughed. I honestly thought he was joking. "No," I said immediately. His face hardened. He talked about family duty, about sacrifice, about how siblings, then corrected himself, how sisters should give everything for each other. He told me my mother hadn't raised me right. I offered money, I offered support, I even offered Ashlin a room, rent-free, until she could get back on her feet. He rejected all of it. "You'll move out," he said calmly, "and you'll cover the bills. That's what makes sense." That was the moment something inside me snapped. I stood up, told him it wasn't happening, and walked out. I didn't know then that refusing him would cost more than our already fractured relationship. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was afraid, but because my father's words kept replaying in my head, over and over, like a scratched record. Family duty, sacrifice. Your mother didn't raise you right. It was amazing how easily he could summon my dead mother when he needed leverage. For a week after that meeting, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts, no apologies. Just silence. I told myself that maybe, just maybe, he had realized how insane his demand was. I should have known better. The following Friday, I left work early. I was exhausted, mentally wrung out, and all I wanted was to go home, kick off my shoes, and pretend the world didn't exist for a few hours. As I turned onto my street, something felt off. There was a truck parked in front of my house. 2 men stood near the driveway, carrying boxes. My boxes. At first, my brain refused to process it. I actually parked down the block, convinced I had the wrong house. But when I stepped out of my car, I recognized the lamp sticking out of one box. The framed photo of my mother taped to another. I ran. "What are you doing?" I shouted, my voice cracking. One of the men looked at me, confused. "We were hired to clear the place," he said. "The homeowner ordered it." "I am the homeowner," I snapped. "Put that back, now." They hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. And that's when I heard his voice behind me. "Neoma." I turned. My father stood on my porch, calm, confident. Ashlin was beside him, arms folded, eyes darting around like she was afraid someone might see her. I felt something cold settle in my chest. "You had no right," I said slowly. "How did you even get in?" He didn't answer that. "You're being dramatic," he replied. "This is what we talked about." "No," I said. "This is what you demanded." He sighed like I was exhausting him. "I raised you," he said. "You owe this family." I laughed again, but this time there was no humor in it. "You sent me away at 8, I said. "You didn't raise me. I survived you." Ashlin stepped forward. "You're really going to do this?" she asked. "When I'm pregnant?" That word again. Pregnant. Like it was a weapon. "I told you I'd help financially," I said. "I told you I'd give you a room. You don't get to evict me from my own house." My father's voice dropped. "If you don't cooperate," he said, "we'll make this very unpleasant." That's when I pulled out my phone. "You have 10 seconds to leave," I said, "or I call the police." For a moment, I thought he'd challenge me. He stared at me, jaw clenched, calculating. Then Ashlin tugged on his sleeve, whispering something I couldn't hear. He turned to the movers. "Leave," he said sharply. They didn't need to be told twice. As they drove away, my father leaned close enough that I could smell the beer on his breath. "You'll regret this," he said. "Family remembers betrayal." I watched them leave. That night, sitting alone on my living room floor, surrounded by half-packed boxes, the doubt crept in. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because I'd been trained my whole life to question myself when they were upset. I wondered if I was heartless, if I was selfish, if refusing them meant I really was the cold daughter they always painted me to be. I didn't talk to my friends about it. I didn't know how. All I knew was that my father had never wanted me until he needed what I had. And that realization hurt more than the threat ever could. A week later, my phone rang. It was Ashlin. And this time, she wasn't calling to demand anything. She wanted to talk. I stared at my phone for a long time before answering. Ashlin never called me unless she wanted something. That had always been the rule. Growing up, she barely acknowledged my existence unless my father was in the room. And even then, I was background noise. So when I finally picked up and heard her shaky voice, it caught me off guard. "I just want to talk," she said, "not fight." I didn't believe her. But I agreed. She wanted to come to my house. I said no. After what happened last time, the movers, the boxes, my father standing on my porch like he owned the place, I wasn't ready to let any of them cross that threshold again. We settled on a small coffee shop halfway between our places, neutral ground. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the corner with her hands wrapped tightly around a cup she hadn't touched. Her usual confidence was gone. No dramatic posture, no eye rolling, just nerves. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "I know you think I'm the villain," she finally said. I didn't respond. I'd learned that silence made people tell the truth faster. She took a deep breath. "My boyfriend didn't leave me because of commitment issues," she said. That's just what Dad believes. I frowned. Then why did he leave? Her jaw tightened. Because I lied to him. The words hung between us. She told me he'd found out about the things she never talked about at home. The escorting, the men, the OnlyFans page she pretended was just a hobby that never really took off. She admitted she'd hidden it all from him, convinced herself it didn't count if she stopped once they got serious. He found out right before I told him I was pregnant, she said quietly. He lost it, put a hole in the wall, said the kid couldn't be his. That last part made my stomach drop. I asked her how she knew. She looked down. He had a vasectomy last year. I didn't know what to say. She kept talking, faster now, like she was afraid I'd interrupt. She told me about Marissa, about how none of this had started on its own. She told me college was a waste, Ashlin said art wouldn't pay bills, said I needed a man, not a degree. I thought of Marissa's voice, sharp, confident, always right. Ashlin told me how it began. Older men, dinners, mentorship, then parties, promises. One man who said he could get her modeling work and instead sold her time. How she stayed quiet because she was scared. How she eventually learned that sleeping with men felt safer than pretending they cared. That's what she taught me, Ashlin whispered. That being wanted was the same as being valued. She admitted she didn't know who the baby's father was, that there were a few men who sent her money now, each believing they were the only one. One had even proposed. Marissa wanted her to marry him and let him believe the baby was his. I felt sick. I didn't tell Dad any of this, she said. I can't. He still thinks I just did a little modeling. Finally, she looked at me, really looked at me. I need help, she said, real help. And I know you're mad, but you're the only stable person in this family. There it was. She asked me to reconsider, to agree with our father for now, to move out temporarily, to give them the house until things calm down. I shook my head. I'll help financially, I said again. I'll support the baby, but I'm not leaving my house. Her face changed instantly. The vulnerability evaporated. So you listened to everything I just told you, she said, her voice rising. And you still won't help? I am helping, I said, just not the way you want. She stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. You're selfish, she snapped. Dad was right about you. You should have been sent away and never brought back. The words hit harder than I expected. She stormed out before I could respond, leaving her untouched coffee behind. I sat there for a long time after she left, staring at the door, trying to untangle what I felt. Pity, anger, sadness, a strange sense of guilt I didn't deserve. I believe she told me the truth. But truth didn't automatically mean obligation. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was unraveling, something none of us were ready to face yet. And a few days later, my father called again. He wanted to meet me at a bar. I said yes. That was my first mistake. I almost didn't go. When my father asked me to meet him at a bar instead of his house, something about it felt off. Too public, too performative, like he needed witnesses. But curiosity got the better of me, and if I'm being honest, part of me still hoped, stupidly, that he wanted to talk. Really talk. The bar was dim and loud, the kind of place where conversations got swallowed by music and regret. He was already there, sitting at the counter, a half-empty glass in front of him. He didn't ask how I was. Instead, he asked, "Do you know how much you're earning now?" I stiffened. Why does that matter? He shrugged. Because it means you can afford another house, easily. I stared at him. I already have a house. This conversation should have ended weeks ago. He waved the bartender over for another drink and leaned closer. You don't have a family yet, Neoma. Ashlin does. It's harder for a woman to raise a child alone. That child already has a home, I said. She lives with you. He shook his head. That's not enough. A baby needs stability. I almost laughed. Almost. And what happens when she's living alone in a whole house, I asked. Pregnant? Unemployed? That's when he said it. Your stepmother and I will move in with her. Into your house. The words didn't register at first. It felt like my brain short-circuited. Before I could respond, someone behind the counter let out a quiet, bitter laugh. My father turned sharply. "Do you have a problem?" The bartender looked up, completely calm. "Yeah," he said, "I do." My stomach dropped when I recognized his face. This was Ashlin's ex-boyfriend. He wiped his hands on a towel and looked directly at my father. "You might want to know who you're defending so hard." My father straightened. "You're the man who abandoned my daughter?" The bartender scoffed. "I didn't abandon anyone. I walked away from a lie." My father clenched his fists. "You got her pregnant and ran." "No," he said quietly. "I couldn't have." Silence fell between us. "I had a vasectomy last year," he continued. "Didn't want kids. Ever." I felt my pulse in my ears. He went on, voice steady, controlled. He talked about finding out she'd been lying, about the men, the accounts, the late nights, how he ignored the signs until the pregnancy forced the truth out. When she told me she was pregnant, he said, it confirmed everything. My father's face shifted, anger draining into shock, then something close to devastation. The bartender shrugged. "I don't know what she told you, but no father should be proud of that kind of deception." That was the last thing my father heard before he stood up and walked out. No words, no defense, just silence. Later that night, Ashlin showed up at my door, hysterical. "You ruined everything," she sobbed. I pulled her inside, even though every instinct screamed not to. She accused me of telling our father. I swore I hadn't. Eventually, she believed me. That's when she told me what happened after my father got home. He confronted her, demanded she quit everything, called her disgusting, said no good man would ever want her now. I hugged her as she cried, even though part of me felt numb. But in between sobs, she said something strange. She said Marissa hadn't spoken at all. Not when my father ranted about loyalty, not when he talked about good women. "She couldn't say anything," Ashlin whispered. "Not about that." "What do you mean?" I asked. "She goes to yoga every day," Ashlin said, "and that's not really yoga." The word stuck in my head. Yoga. Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. I didn't know it yet, but that single word was about to tear their marriage apart. I couldn't let it go. That night, after Ashlin left, I lay awake staring at my ceiling, replaying her words. "That's not really yoga." It sounded ridiculous, petty even, but something about Marissa's silence at home, her sudden obedience, the way she'd gone rigid when my father spoke about loyalty, it didn't fit. 2 days later, my father called again. His voice was different, not sharp, not commanding, tired. "I need to talk," he said. "Just us." We met at his house. Marissa wasn't there. Ashlin was asleep. He sat down heavily on the couch and rubbed his face like he hadn't slept in days. Then he said something I never expected. "I think you hate me." I didn't answer right away. "I don't hate you," I said finally. "I'm disappointed." He swallowed. "Your mother hated me too." "She didn't," I said quickly. "She always told me you loved me, that you just didn't know how to show it." His eyes filled, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then he confessed. He told me he married my mother because she got pregnant. He said she was good to him, but he never felt the spark. Then he met Marissa. "She lit something in me," he said. "Before I knew it, she was pregnant too." My hands went cold. He told me Marissa had shown up at our house and told my mother everything. My mother asked for a divorce without screaming, without drama. I realized then that my parents hadn't fallen apart naturally. They were pushed. "I sent you away because Marissa felt threatened," he said quietly. "She thought I'd choose you out of guilt. Love makes you do stupid things," he said. I wanted to scream. That's when I noticed movement behind him. Marissa stood in the doorway, holding a water bottle. She didn't say a word, just set it on the table and left, saying she was going to yoga. I don't know what possessed me, but I followed her. I sat in my car 2 blocks away and watched as she parked outside a yoga studio, then walked past it. She glanced around before slipping into an alley and climbing into another car. She kissed the driver. He slapped her, laughing. My hands shook as I recorded everything. Later that week, I confronted her in the kitchen, calmly, quietly. She denied it until I showed her the video. She didn't cry. She smiled. She told me she'd been planning a divorce anyway, that her lover had always been the one she wanted, that Ashlin wasn't even sure whose child she was. Then my father walked in. He heard everything. Over the next 2 days, Marissa and Ashlin were told to leave. The divorce began. My father begged for forgiveness, asked for therapy, asked me to help him find one. I did. Marissa called me afterward, begging for the video. For Ashlin, she said. I told her the same thing she once told me. Your kid, your problem. I didn't feel victorious, just free. Boundaries aren't revenge. They're instructions. And for the first time in my life, I finally wrote my own.